Have you ever noticed that your daily drive and passions seem to just mysteriously vanish? And I'm talking about vanishing even for things you absolutely love doing. Well, you definitely aren't alone here. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to completely decode the biological mystery behind why our motivation crashes, and much more importantly, how we can rebuild it from the ground up. I want you to think about your own life for a second. Why does something you love suddenly feel like a total chore? Is there a specific activity, maybe working out, playing a sport, or working on a creative hobby that you used to be incredibly excited about, but lately you just struggle to find the energy for? It just doesn't have that same oomph it used to, right? Look, this is a massively widespread modern problem. We almost always blame ourselves, thinking, oh, I've just become lazy or I've lost my edge. But as we're about to see, the real culprit is actually hidden in our daily habits. Okay, let's dive into this. We live in an era of constant, non-stop distractions. And sure, our smartphones add incredible depth and richness to our lives. I mean, we're texting friends, streaming music, sharing info, listening to podcasts, snapping selfies. But the catch is, we do all of these things while we're engaged in other activities, like going to dinner or exercising. And this isn't just about us having a distracted nature. As we're going to explore, this constant state of stimulation is literally manipulating our brain chemistry in a way that is driving up levels of depression and completely sapping our daily motivation. To really understand why this happens, we have to look under the hood at our biology. Uncovering the brain chemistry behind this motivation drop is absolutely fascinating. It all revolves around a molecule you've likely heard of, dopamine. But, and this is key, it's not just about getting dopamine. It's about the really intricate relationship between our dopamine peaks, which are those sudden, intense rushes of excitement, and our overall dopamine baseline, which is that steady, everyday level of motivation we feel just waking up in the morning. It actually all comes down to a neurological concept known as reward prediction error. Here's how it works. When we expect something good to happen, we are highly motivated to pursue it. If it happens, boom, great. We get the reward, usually a nice hit of dopamine, and we're far more likely to do that behavior again. This prediction error is the very basis of casino gambling. It is exactly how casinos keep you coming back again and again, even though the house always wins on average. You are biologically hardwired to chase that chemical reward. And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue with our modern habits. We are layering our dopamine. Layering is when you stack multiple dopamine-evoking activities at the exact same time. So when we interact with digital technology, texting, scrolling social media, or blasting music while we're doing other things, we are artificially spiking our dopamine levels by firing off multiple reward triggers simultaneously. Let's ground this science with a pretty relatable personal anecdote from Dr. Andrew Huberman. He loves working out, but he realized he was totally layering his dopamine. Think about it. First, he'd take a pre-workout drink. Next, he'd put on his absolute favorite playlist. And finally, he'd bring his smartphone right into the gym to text, listen to podcasts, and just generally communicate. Now, that all sounds great, right? Like an awesome workout. But by stacking all these highly enjoyable triggers, he actually increased the number of conditions his brain required just to feel pleasure. He was creating a massive artificial dopamine peak, which brings us to the hidden danger here. There's a very stark contrast between how our brains should operate and how we actually treat them today. On one side, we have healthy, intermittent dopamine release. On the other side, we have this dangerous, layered approach we were just talking about. When you layer all these dopamine sources, you get a massive peak. But just like a drug that stops working for someone who uses it repeatedly, that massive peak forces your body's overall dopamine baseline to drop completely to compensate. You literally experience a chemical crash. And over time, the activity itself completely loses its fulfilling aspect. People always say we have this cultural fear of being alone with our thoughts, but honestly, it's often just our dopamine baseline crashing because we've layered way too many things. Now, this brings us to a realization that honestly offers some profound psychological relief. To quote Dr. Huberman, "There wasn't anything wrong with me. There was something wrong with the approach." If you've been feeling unmotivated lately, I want you to really absorb that. Your lack of motivation is not a personal failure. You aren't lazy. You have simply crashed your dopamine baseline by layering way too many sources of pleasure at once. Understanding this circuitry provides a deep, deep sense of satisfaction, mainly because it means it's entirely fixable. So the big question is, how do we fix it? Let's shift gears and focus on the actionable, scientifically backed solution for reclaiming your motivation across school, sports, work, and even your relationships. We need to restore your baseline. And to do that, we actually have to look back at those master manipulators of human motivation. Yes, you heard that right. We need to do exactly what the casinos do. I know it sounds a little funny, but the real secret to maintaining long-term motivation without totally dropping your baseline is adopting the casino strategy. Think about it. They don't give you a massive jackpot every single time you pull the lever, right? If you want to maintain your drive, you have to ensure that those crazy high dopamine peaks don't happen every single time. The absolute crucial point here is creating an intermittent reinforcement schedule. Sometimes a little, sometimes a lot, sometimes a medium amount. If you experience a win in an activity you love, you have to be very careful about allowing yourself to experience huge peaks every single time. Unless, of course, you're willing to suffer the crash that inevitably follows. We simply cannot chase massive peaks every time we do a beloved activity. It's just not sustainable. So, how do we actually build this into a normal routine? How do you practically modulate these rewards? Well, you have to randomly strip away the chemical and digital dopamine layers. If you love the gym, maybe remove your phone entirely from your workouts today. No texting, no scrolling, zero. Occasionally, just skip the pre-workout or the energy drink. Sometimes do an activity socially, which is highly rewarding, and other times force yourself to do it completely alone, in total silence. By varying the dopamine you experience at random, you are actively keeping your baseline healthy. Now, I won't sugarcoat it, making this transition definitely requires some discipline. Day one of removing your phone from an activity you usually layer it with, it's going to be very tough. The source material notes that the first week of not engaging with a phone during a workout is a highly challenging adjustment period. It feels weird. But by month one, if you can push through that initial discomfort, you will completely conquer this dopamine circuitry. The sheer pleasure, the genuine excitement, and the natural motivation for the activity itself will deeply, deeply return. You are actually going to enjoy it that much more. Which brings us to our final and definitely most important question of this explainer. What dopamine layers will you strip away today? Now that you understand the actual biological mechanics of peaks and baselines, you have the power to take back your drive. So pick one activity you love that's been feeling a bit like a chore lately, identify the extra layers of stimulation you bring to it, and just try removing them. Thank you so much for joining me to map out this fascinating science. Get out there, embrace the intermittent schedule, and go reclaim your motivation.